Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. A real pleasure to have you here with us in Cannes. Maybe you could just begin with a brief introduction to your film, The Damned, for people who don't know anything about it. What can they expect?
It is a war film, or perhaps should I say it's a film about war as an existential condition, because the film is the journey of a few volunteers of the 19th century U.S. Army during the Civil War who are deployed in frontier territory of Montana to patrol it. That's a gold-rich territory. It's in the middle of the gold rush, and as time progresses, the inevitable happens in war, a clash, after which they need to reassess, their motives, their goals, and in a way come to terms with the fate.
And what kind of sparked the idea of making a film about this very particular period? Because most of your other work has been more in the present day, I guess leaning more towards non-fiction documentary. So what kind of precipitated the idea to go back and explore this period?
Yeah, I think my previous work has been about the present, current, times, and yet they're a prophetic value in a way. The other side was I was working with, right-wing paramilitary groups who were thinking of taking over the government in a coup. That 6 years later, here we are on January 6th, right, witnessing it. What you gonna do when the world's on fire? About police brutality, and then George Floyd's murder brings the issue to the attention of the worldwide, media, press, and people. And this time it was kind of the other way around, staying present in the moment, assessing the situation of America, especially at as we're facing a new controversial presidential election, and then kind of seeing the sentiments emerging, some of them reactionary, and then kind of asking myself, where did it all start, and trying to go back to some of the roots of it all, trying to understand division, trying to draw parallelism between that division and today's division.
And how do you think your style of kind of blurring this line between documentary and fiction is brought to bear on this feature, I guess, in the way that you're create environments for your actors to play around within without necessarily being so didactic about how they act within that. So maybe talk a bit about the process.
Correct. Yeah, I try to make my cinema is experiential, and that experiential way of making films, which starts from within. People, the interpreters, are kind of asked to bring who they really are. Their moral, infrastructure, their values, their ideologies into the film. So the characters become themselves. It's not that they had to interpret a character. Yes, we walk into the unknown that they're facing through this war. We are actually walking through the unknown, or a land we don't know. It's a frontier land. It's Montana towards, getting closer to Canada in the winter, which is actually closed access to people until May, and then we are accessing it. So facing the adversities, even on climatic adversities, and definitely being in hostile territory. So all of that creates some sort of emotional, some sort of catharsis, based on which we actually build the story. So there is something. No matter whether we are, more towards the documentary realm or whether the fiction realm, there's something very experiential that actually is the leitmotif of this film, just as it was for other past works.
Talk a bit about this shoot, because everything I read about it sounded particularly grueling. A real physical challenge for both you and the actors. How was that? Was there a particularly tough moment?
In the film, especially in the part after the clash, after the battle, where people are looking for a way out towards, they had to go towards a mountain pass, we actually started a process of climbing higher and higher in elevation towards a pass in the mountains of northern Montana, a territory we didn't know about. And sometimes as the soldiers are trying to climb with ropes, we crew members did the same. We had to do it through a rope, and then through the ropes we had to bring food up there, spend the day there, and then as the sun began to set, we would actually just climb descend the mountain, and no matter, and sometimes, we found ourselves in difficult situations. There have been, me myself, I had a bad fall, and I was through, caused, I had kidney stones caused to extreme dehydration, which I had to pass as I was shooting, and I came from shooting. So the physical, and this is not, I don't want to romanticize the process, but again, talking about experience, there's something that, I don't know, Marina Abramovich did in performing arts, right? As you get really closer and closer to what you consider the limit, even though how much physical, pain or you can bear, then perhaps you get to the other side and understand the limits are way further away than you thought they'd be. And there's a value in that. There's, again, that I'm always looking for that catharsis to understand even, who am I, what I got inside me. Yeah.
And in terms of thematic considerations, I mean, you are tapping into aspects of the war film genre, of the Western, but by sort of quite deliberately taking us away from any kind of, usual idea of a front line. You put the story in a quite different space. And, I was reading one of your interviews about, is there such a thing as a truly anti-war film? How many films that supposedly are anti-war still end up kind of making heroes of their protagonists, or kind of making some kind of value judgment of good versus evil. So how do you want to kind of counter that with your film?
Yeah, first of all, you are correct about mentioning the front line. The idea of front line, which is heavily used and utilized in movies, they give you a sense of control over the military action, it's reassuring to think that the war machine has got the soldiers back, which is the furthest thing from the truth. As soon as combat begins, and that is highly present and described in literature. So as soon as the conflict begins, you lose the perception of time and space. It's impossible to perceive where the shots are coming from, and it really becomes a quest for survival. So staying into hiding, not being seen, is actually the way you survive. And going now back to the second part, which is important, there's no such thing like as an anti-war movie. We can compromise on that. If you're anti-war, then you're anti-war all the way. So if you claim to make a film as an expose or trigger reflection on the brutality of war, then you cannot introduce elements such as martyrdom, personal sacrifice, heroism, revenge, or letting go of life and letting yourself be, letting yourself go in war, or showing fragility as madness, as if fragility is when you lose it all, whereas fragility is inherent to our human essence, especially within the context of masculinity. So in this film, what drives these people even through battle, but not only through battle, is fear, is that this primordial fragility that is also inherent to every human being and to every male. So if you want to be anti-war, we just get to steer clear completely from every precept of, or representation of war, of good and bad dichotomy and heroisms. Otherwise, we just becoming politically dangerous.
And finally, in terms of those themes, what do you hope will strike a chord with the contemporary audience in that sense? And I guess thinking about particularly the US Civil War, how a lot of divisions on race, on class, on religion, and ideas of toxic masculinity can almost be traced back to these sorts of periods.
I think American audiences would just perceive that, they immediately probably, from a even sensory, standpoint, it's very, I think it is It's almost natural for an American to feel, as you talk about how godly, the godliness of war, that can be tied into their own history. And I'm using there, I could say our own, because I've been in America for more than 2 decades, and I feel, I feel that I belong to the culture. And then at the same time, there's something else, perhaps, and that ties into representation of war, that I do think that Americans this time, because of the fact that, all they're used none by the fact that the war is a spectacle. War films are built based on or built around battles. The cacophony of the battle becomes the film itself. I mean, we can recall many films that are just built into the pyrotechnical spectacle of war. But this time, the film is about the waiting for something inevitable to happen. And when that happens, it's quick. And there is no identification of the good guy, bad guy, good and evil. There's no, it is just an inhumane moment that has that echoes throughout the film. So I do think that Americans will perceive, from an emotional, from a standpoint, from a personal standpoint, the inhuman, how inhumane that moment of battle is, and it must not, shall not be elevated to any sort of spectacle whatsoever.
100%. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with me.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed presenting a film here in Cannes. Thanks so much.
Thank you.